Come, chat with Nicholas. He'll listen to you. Then he'll laugh, and then he'll cry with you. It's all in a safe space for you to speak your truth. Oh, come let's chat with Nick.
Well, today we've got a very exciting figure, Mr. James Bond. So I started off with a very poor joke before the podcast started, so I hope you forgive me for that. And I actually have a nice cat. I was going to have it on my lap and be on my swivel chair, but I realized I don't have a swivel chair, so it completely ruined the surprise. James, thank you so much for joining us today, and perhaps just explain whereabouts in the world you are today.
Thank you, Nicholas. It's nice to be with you. I'm originally from Montreal in Canada, and but about 35 years ago, I moved to Southern California. People don't ask me why. So it's we don't really get snow. I had to take. We have 4 kids, and our youngest daughter, we had to take her north to see snow because she never experienced it before. So
definitely not in California. Yeah.
No.
Well, in the south of California. Now, today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic, which is persuasion. And you've got a new book out called BrainGlue, and we can go into a little bit about that and talk about persuasion and its importance just in all facets of life. But perhaps we can just go back a little bit and look at your 30-year plus history and where did you start out? How did you become a master in persuasion? And what prompted you to put all of your cheat codes basically into this book?
So I'm originally from Montreal. I had an advertising agency and I worked my way up and eventually had some of the world's biggest clients: Kraft Foods, Timex watches, Avon Cosmetics, Abbott Laboratories, Seagram's, the booze maker. Their world headquarters is in Montreal. And 2 things happened. One is I worked with my brother for a period of time. Family and business doesn't always mix, as I learned personally. But it really bothered me that he could actually sell me better than I could sell me. I'm a technical person. I have a technical background. And I came from mechanical engineering and all this. So to me, I like the techniques of advertising, and I was fascinated by it. But I also loved psychology. I fell in love with psychology in college. And I realized that, wow, this is fascinating because this is like mechanical engineering, but with humans. Okay. And we went into Avon Cosmetics of Canada. We had an opportunity to win them as a client. And then we were sitting there, my brother John and I were sitting there. And the buyer from Avon looked at us and said, John, I'd rather work with you guys in this other company, but frankly, your price is higher. And my brother John paused for a moment, and then he leaned across the desk and said, why do you think the other guy's so cheap? And we sat there for this long pause. It was really a painful long pause. And then the guy says, I get your point. I'll write you up a purchase order. And it's like, I thought my brain was going to explode. We didn't have to lower our price. He's actually hiring us because our price is higher. Wow. And it made me realize there's all this area of persuasion that I don't understand at all. And, so a while after that, I had the opportunity to win the anti-drug campaign in America. And in Europe, you may not have seen this, but I'll explain this advertising campaign. So I came up with this fantastic logical reasons why you should not do drugs. And then I saw the ad that beat us, and it terrified me. And it was a guy holding an egg over a sizzling frying pan. And he said, this is your brain. And he cracks the shell and he drops the egg into the sizzling frying pan. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions? And it was profound. When I saw this, 2 things happened. One is I recognized this was much more persuasive and powerful than anything I knew how to do. And 2 is it was emotional selling, not logic. I wanted to give people logical reasons, and I have logical reasons, but it's emotion that drives people to take action. I've done lots of research since then, found other major psychiatrists and psychologists and researchers that have discovered that we buy for emotional reasons. More than 90% of all buying is emotional, not logical. I mean, if I can give you a great, beautiful picture, you might buy because the product looks really cool. But people buy, it's more powerful if you can learn emotion. And so for me, what I did was, it terrified me. and they don't teach in school how to do emotional selling. And I
Yeah.
went to the library and they had just superficial things, but they don't really teach it. So I said, the scientist in me emerged, and I said, let me write, this is your brain on drugs on a 3x5 card. And let me take a box and call it a passion box. And every time I see an ad or hear something that's emotionally powerful, not logical, but emotional, I'll look at it and go, whoa, hell, I want to buy that. I want to take it and I want to drop it in the box in the hopes that eventually there'll be enough examples. And I did it also for phrases that people would say also, okay, that there'll be enough examples inside the box that hopefully one day I would discover how emotional selling works. More than 10 years later, after that, I met John Gray in Southern California. I met John Gray, and John Gray was telling me how he wrote this incredible book, Men, Women, and Relationships. And it's one of the best relationship books ever. And he sold a few thousand copies, about 20,000 copies, he was telling me. Then he got this crazy idea. What if I change the title to Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? And then change the content, just to slightly tweak the content so it refers to it throughout the book. What do you think happened? Suddenly, almost overnight, he went to 500,000 copies got sold without him even promoting it. Then 1 million, then 2 million, then 5 million. I know the promoters the guys that work with him, this guy that works with him, and I wrote in my book that he sold 10 million copies. And he said, no, you're wrong. I said, I'm sorry. He said, no, we're over 50 million copies have already been sold. 50 million copies just because he changed the title? And I was like, I thought my head was going to explode. So what I did was I went to my passion box and I dumped it on my bed. And I said, okay, well, Men Are From Mars is a metaphor. Okay, we are not from Mars. At least some people probably think we're from Mars because we are a little different, but that's a whole other story. But I realized that he used a metaphor. And so I said, that's an interesting, is that the secret to emotional selling? When I put when I dumped the passion box on my bed, I realized there are 14 brain triggers. Metaphors is one of 14. And I could suddenly start seeing its patterns. And, for me as a logical person, I wanted to learn, I have a scientist in me, so I wanted to learn how to, can I actually take phrases or product names or the way we describe our product or service or the way we try to sell our ideas to people, can we take those and actually put together a tool that helps us to make it resonate with the right side of the brain, with the emotion side of the brain? And it does. And I remember the first client I worked with where I finally started realizing this, I didn't name it BrainGlue yet, but I was three guys who had a construction company. I had no experience with construction at all. But after 10 years, they had $2 million of sales. That's not bad. In 1 year, by applying this, I took them from 2 to 10 million in sales in 1 year. And they razzed me, okay? They said, hey, Bond, it was supposed to be 12 million. I said, shut up. They bought each other the biggest BMW, each one has presents as they reached 10 million. And 2 years later, they reached 32 million in sales just by applying this. And suddenly, like when we theorize things and we look at it, okay, it makes sense. That's one thing. We think, wow, this is really good. But because I've been a consultant for a lot of my life, as a consultant, when you get to apply it with a client and suddenly things explode, it freaks you out, I had one client that I was working with, and then I started doing the online version of his. He didn't want to do any online stuff. I took him from 800,000, 900,000 to 11 million in sales almost overnight by applying this. But I suddenly started making, 7 figures. It was the first time. And I remember as a consultant, I was like scared. First, I called my wife. I said, hey, Pam, American Express just charged our credit card $1,000 and, on the ads that we're running. She said, well, stop it. So I said, oh, wait a second. We just made 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14. I'll call you right back. Suddenly I realized we made a fortune. Wait a second. And when something happens, most people are like that. You're making so much money and it's pretty good. You can make a good living. But once you pass $1 million and 2 million and starts making real money, it almost feels like, did I break the law somehow? I'm not going to get arrested because I've got all this money coming in suddenly, do I? I didn't, but it just, you have the imposter syndrome. It starts feeling like I'm making more money with this thing online than I make, as a consultant by far. I don't even need to do consulting anymore, though I still have done. But it made me understand these tools are so powerful that I remember I saw a History Channel show that was talking about Pop-Tarts, and this sticks in my mind. Pop-Tarts was invented by Post Cereals, and Post Cereals hates Kellogg's, okay? Although they stole the original idea of cornflakes from Kellogg's, okay? But that's how they built their business, and they were selling cereal and everything else. So the head of Post Cereals came up with this idea of what Pop-Tarts is, like putting this thing in a toaster and it comes up and it's got jelly inside it. It's a little cake. And what a great idea. And about 3 months before he launched it, where they were able to introduce it, he talked about it. He was bragging about, we have this new product, blah, 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 and everything else. He called it Country Squares. Well, the head of Kellogg's saw this and went, "Way, that's a great idea." And he's calling it Country Squares, the other guy. And so the head of Kellogg's looked at it and said, he found somebody, they figured out how to make it really fast. So within the 3 months, they were actually able to launch their product. But back then they had pop art was really powerful with what's his name?
Roy Lichtenstein.
Yeah, Lichtenstein and all these guys. Okay,
and Warhol,
yeah, Andy Warhol, right? Andy Warhol was famous, and so people knew the idea of pop art. So that's already something that's in the brain. That's one of the things about BrainGlue is you want to understand something that's already in the brain or a pattern that's in the brain. Use that. So he went pop art. People really like pop art. Well, why don't we call it Pop-Tarts? And it pops out of the toaster, so it's almost a visual, an auditory thing. You can hear the pop as you can visualize it as you hear the word Pop-Tarts. Pop-Tarts sold so well that it threw Post out of the business. They invented the product. What happened was, in fact, to show you how great it was, when he came up with the name Pop-Tarts, they started selling far more than he expected, and they ran out of inventory. And so they actually ran a full-page ad, and I don't know, the New York Times or something, that said, "We apologize, but we will be producing it." We didn't realize how many people would buy Pop-Tarts. And Country Squares existed, but nobody bought Country Squares. They waited for Pop-Tarts to be available again. And eventually Post left, even though they invented it. The other guy stole it from them, and yet they had such a better name that it just took off like gangbusters. And when I start realizing all this and all these pieces, how they fit together, I mean, even in America, we have the famous President John F. Kennedy, and he said, "Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country." Well, that's chiasmus. Okay, it's a flip. And chiasmus, I'll give you some examples of chiasmus, but I suddenly realized, like, we use this stuff all the time. And when you can apply it to marketing, it just, your brain explodes, and then your wallet explodes. Okay, I have to say that.
Yeah.
So I explain this. But so winners never quit, and quitters never win. Okay, flips.
Yeah.
Okay, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Okay. And so there are a lot of products that use, that understand to use this. There are a lot of famous people who use chiasmus. Malcolm X, who was a civil rights activist, a black civil rights activist in the early days of the civil rights movement, he said, "We didn't, so America talks about how we landed on Plymouth Rock and everything else. He said, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. The rock landed on us." And people would go like, "Whoa." If he said, "We're a black person, I'm a black person in America," and I don't think people really understand how hard it is being a black person in America, people would listen to it. It's logical, go in one ear and out the other, maybe you'll take action or something. But when you say something profound like, "We didn't land on Plymouth Rock, the rock landed on us," it sticks in the brain. And he built fans who loved his way of explaining things. He said, "When you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything."
Yeah.
That's profound. And what happened is
that's one of my favorites.
Absolutely, and mine too. And it's just because I love Warren Buffett. Okay, he was the world's richest man. He's not anymore, but he's still up there. I'll take a part of that, please.
Yeah,
I actually worked for Warren Buffett's team. They brought me in because I'm one of America's leading behavior management specialists, and I blew their minds. So it was lots of fun. But that's a whole other story. But Warren Buffett has this great line. He says, "Only when the tide goes out do you realize who's been swimming naked." What a great line. Now, what he's basically saying is only when times get tough do you realize who's really competent, okay? But if you say that, people, it's logic. People go, yeah, okay. But to say only when the tide goes out do you realize who's been swimming naked. He used the naked, a trigger word too, by the way. It's like, what? And naked is a trigger word, by the way. So there's a naked beverages, naked juice. And Odwalla was owned by Coca-Cola, and it was the largest selling juice. And there was, I think, Naked was started by three guys, friends or whatever. They shot past Odwalla. Odwalla was, and that's one of the things about BrainGlue is you don't have to have a lot of money. The same money you have or even less. So they were marketing, but then they put the product on the shelf. I actually have samples of it. Naked juice. People looking, okay, Odwalla, that's pretty cool. Naked juice? What?
Yeah.
And they reach out and they touch it. By the way, if you're selling a product off the shelf and you can get people to touch it and take it off the shelf, you have a better chance of their buying it, okay? See, people would take a naked juice. What? They pick it, look at it. No, it's all natural. Oh, cool. And they would buy it. And naked juice dominated. They shot past Odwalla. In Southern California, we have something called In-N-Out Burgers. It's a family-owned business. But In-N-Out Burgers, competes against McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, and all these stuff that spent hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, In-N-Out spends almost nothing. I mean, In-N-Out, first it uses a flip, in and out, okay? A lot of people consider the term In-N-Out referring to sex, so that really adds, okay? In-N-Out, so you're driving down the street and you go, In-N-Out Burgers? What? You stop, and it catches your attention. And then what happens is then it has a massive line of people that are, picking up, buying products from them continuously. I was just there the other night. We're driving by and my wife said, look at that In-N-Out. Look at that line. It's still like every day they have a line of people. I mean, you have to have a good product, but there are a lot of people that have good products that struggle. And if you struggle, a lot of the reason why you struggle is because, you don't have a name that triggers, we're so over communicated. We're so bombarded with information and knowledge that it just, you need a way to trigger a brain trigger so that people go like, what? I mean, there's just so many products. There's a woman called Eve Ensler, and she wrote a play that's on Broadway or just off Broadway that's been massively successful. And the play is about women's rights. So what did she call it? The Vagina Monologues. You think the fact that if it was called, a woman's rights, it would get as many people standing in line to go to it?
Absolutely.
Oh, just the Vagina Monologues. What the heck is that? And people are going to check it out. And so there's a woman in America. I think she's international, but she's a stay-at-home mom. So how much money do people spend on Facebook advertising? Okay, how about if she spends zero and got 5 million fans? She spent zero and got 5 million fans. How did she get 5 million fans? Well, she's thinking, I want to start a Facebook page. Okay, what do I do? Mommy needs time to herself. Mommy needs a rest. What does mommy need? Well, I know what mommy needs. Mommy needs vodka. And she came up with a page called Mommy Needs Vodka. I remember this is how I became a fan, okay? So, and somebody must have passed on one of her posts to me, and I'm looking at it, it's a funny post. Okay, it's really good. Then I went, Mommy Needs Vodka is what it came from? Then I clicked on her thing, Mommy Needs Vodka. I clicked on that, and I saw all these other posts. I said, oh, she's hilarious. And I clicked on it, and I became a fan. And that's, what you want to do is you want to trigger the motion sides of the brain so that it wakes them up, first of all, because most of us are half asleep because we're so bombarded. You're talking to somebody and it looks like they're listening to you, but they're thinking, am I going through a divorce? Did I lose a client? Did I win a client? What time is it? How long is this guy going to talk to me? I mean, there's just so many things that if you don't wake up the brain, Blue Emu is a good example. Blue Emu is arthritis cream. And I'm watching this ad while I'm doing something else. We're often multitasking. My TV's on, I'm watching this ad. And Blue Emu is arthritis cream. So if you have, you start having aches and pains in your joints and all that stuff. And they have this guy, Johnny Bench, who's a famous ex-baseball player who's talking. So, okay, and they've got this guy, okay. And he says, Blue Emu, it works fast and you won't stink. And I go like, what did he just say? What did he just say? It works fast and you won't stink? And then from that point forward, he had me glued to watching the ad. And it's like what we want to do is we want to understand how do we grab attention in a way, that sticks to the brain. Now, I'll give you a crazy one, okay? A lot of people, we know Marilyn Monroe, okay?
Yeah.
And so Marilyn Monroe was famous. Well, a lot of people don't understand how she became famous. She was originally Norma Jean. I forget what her last name was. And her manager said, well, Marilyn's a better name than Norma Jean. So why don't you change your name to Marilyn? She went, okay. And I believe it was her stepfather that's named Monroe. So she said Marilyn Monroe, which uses alliteration, Marilyn Monroe, the repetition of sound. By the way, when I started discovering alliteration, I realized how many blockbuster products use alliteration. Coca-Cola, Best Buy,
Yeah.
PayPal, TikTok. You think if TikTok was called, or they have Lululemon, for women, but do you think if
Yeah.
TikTok was called the Chinese social media platform, people would go there? No.
Yeah.
TikTok. In fact, they were called a music something, but they became that. But so what was I just talking about?
Norma Jean.
Oh, Norma Jean. Okay, yeah, Marilyn Monroe. So she changed her name to Marilyn Monroe, which is alliteration, Marilyn Monroe. Okay, and then she loved Jean Harlow, who was a movie star in the early days of the movie industry, and she was very, very hot. And Jean Harlow had platinum blonde hair, so Marilyn went to the same hairdresser that dyed Jean Harlow's hair blonde to get the same color hair, platinum blonde. Okay, and that's it. And Marilyn has a beauty mark on her face, or had a beauty mark on her face, and she'd cover it with makeup. But one day she's looking at photographs of Jean Harlow, and then she notices in some photographs Jean Harlow has a beauty mark on her cheek, and in some it's on her chin. And then she went, wait a second, I bet she doesn't even have a beauty mark. I bet she's just putting a dot on her face to attract attention to herself. So Marilyn, from that point forward, put the dot, she darkened the dot on her face instead of hiding it, and believes that became a massive reason why she became such a blockbuster of success. And there's
you can't not mention the Marilyn Monroe story about the potato sack.
The potato sack.
If you've heard that one, where somebody, I think, said something about it's only because of her clothes that she looks sexy, for example, and she went and dressed up in did a model shoot in a potato sack, and that sold just as well and showed just it doesn't matter what she was wearing, she was still a gorgeous creature. So yeah, and I love that story with the moving with the moving mole. But it also reminds you of that fantastic
well, if you
story
see
about
Madonna, sometimes if you see photographs of her, sometimes her beauty mark is on the left side and sometimes on the right side.
There've been a couple of movies where there've been people with deliberately the mole moves around. I think it is in.
What made me think of this is in advertising. There's a famous advertiser. For a moment, I've lost his name. I'll think of it in a second. And he was David Ogilvy. And David Ogilvy was in the early days of the advertising industry. And he was doing an ad for Hathaway shirts, okay? And Hathaway is actually owned by Warren Buffett now. That's why his company is called Berkshire Hathaway. Hathaway was one of the early companies he bought because it was so rich and successful, okay? Well, David Ogilvy, when you're doing an ad, let's say a magazine ad for a shirt company, Hathaway Shirts, what do you see? You see a good-looking guy with a shirt and a nice pair of pants and shoes maybe, and a nice background, right? Every shirt one looks the same. What he did was he said, let me make it different. This is asymmetry, okay? Something off. He put an eye patch on the guy. And then he would call it the man with the Hathaway shirt. And people would read the ad looking for, why does this guy have an eye patch? And it never explained it, by the way. And he had different ads with different guys, but with the eye patch. So the guy's not a pirate. But because the guy had an eye patch on, just like Marilyn Monroe's beauty mark, it's like, huh? And it grabs you, it stops you. And then you start looking at it and read it. And okay, oh, interesting, a man with a Hathaway shirt. Okay. And it stands out, it sticks out of the brain. I didn't mean to stop you on that, but I was just
Well, two things you brought up here. One was it reminded me of a story of the guy who invented Six Up.
Okay.
So he was so close. I think Victor Borger has a wonderful story about the guy who started 1 up, 2 up, 3 up, and then gives up after 6 up and leaves the 7 up to your imagination. And how a lot of this ties into child developmental psychology, where you'll notice in all sorts of kids' stories and that we try and let the kids, and with puppet shows and that, you have the puppet hiding in the corner and they go, there it is, there it is, there it is. people like discovering things for themselves. They like to seem smart, that they figured something out. So it's also why we like words and names that are slightly obtuse, or that we think we've figured out before somebody else. And I think that's a big trick or tool that's been used in advertising as well. Now,
Absolutely.
when you discuss, let me just have a look at my note here again. But in terms of behavioral management, can you maybe just go through, because I've studied behavioral management, and a lot of people have done MBAs or have done marketing in particular, have done behavioral management. Maybe just give an overview of the kind of work you've done in behavioral management and why it's important that you focus on that when you are looking at, before you get into your marketing planning and into understanding personas and your market.
Well, to me, behavioral management that's what led me to BrainGlue. But I ran one of California's leading behavioral management firms for a little over 13 years, and working with a who's who of American business. Warren Buffett started buying companies, like he bought See's Candy, he bought Berkshire Hathaway shirts, and all that. And he started buying banks. And so he bought a bank that's in Southern California called Mutual Savings Bank of Pasadena. And but the problem they had was their top people. I don't just focus on the sales side, but in this case, their top people hated selling. All their managers, and they wanted to turn their people into top performing salespeople, and they just couldn't, because people were resisting it and fighting it. And so we came in and literally we did two things. We changed the behavior so they were selling and got them to love selling. And it's hard, because if you take I can relate to it, because I hated selling when I was young. Now, in an advertising business, do I have to sell? Ugh. Can I just, but I eventually learned things like I won Seagrams, I remember. In the beginning, I would show a portfolio of all the different work we had, and hopefully some of it would stick. But then I realized that's stupid. Why don't I ask them some core questions? So what do you sell to who? How is it used? What are you competing with? Why yours? Have you used advertising before? What's worked and what doesn't work for you, et cetera? And when I was talking to Seagrams, they were talking about the fact that we spend like $50,000 to $100,000 or more per bottle, because the bottles sit on the shelf and the labels, and we want to make sure that it's got to stand out, but it's also got to have the personality of it. If it's an old Scotch or something, whatever it is, that's 10 years old, you can't make it look like a modern bottle. It's got to look old and yet still be attractive enough. And so we spend a fortune on bottles and packaging. As I'm doing that, I remember I did catalogs for lighting companies. It had all these different lamps. One company had like about 10,000 different lamps, and you have glass and plastic and all this stuff. And so I went, I'm not going to show them everything. I said, let me show you this, because I did lighting catalogs, and I started showing them some of the stuff that we did and why it's important. It makes the texture of it stand out and all that stuff. And they said, oh, we got to work with you guys. We absolutely have to work with you guys. And I sold him, because I got him to tell me how to sell. Like, one of the things I do, I teach a lot of people this, is one of the most powerful questions you could ever ask somebody is past, present, future. Okay. So let's say I was selling an advertising agency. Past. Have you ever worked with an advertising agency before? Whatever they say, they could say, no, we've all done our advertising before, or yes, we have. Okay, well, what worked for you and what didn't work for you? They said, well, this was really good, and we liked this, and we had all the, but we didn't know all the different channels we could focus on, and blah, blah, whatever else. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Now, present. Do you use an agency now, or are you doing it by yourself? No, we do it now. Well, what's working for you? What's not working for you? And then we go to future. If you had the ideal situation, what would that look like? What would be working for you based on what we just said? And then they basically are telling you how to sell them. And so suddenly we realize, and I teach a lot of people this, with behavioral management, you have to understand we have a perception of what we're able to accomplish. You billionaire, for example. I mean, I might be a billionaire, but that's not my focus in life. Okay. I'm glad with lots of millions. Thank you. Okay. But I don't care. I don't need to become a billionaire. Okay. It's like a chair. If you see a chair, I've got a chair I'm sitting on. You've got a chair you're sitting on. Do you think you could stand next to it and jump over the chair, including the back of the chair, without any help? Most of us say no. Okay. Some of us will try it and then realize, well, I guess I shouldn't have said yes. Okay. Because we have a sense of limitations, of our conceptual, perceptual limitations. Okay. And so with behavioral management, we actually get people to tackle stuff beyond their behavioral expectations. Now, you can't take somebody from here to climb the top of Mount Everest. You got to start with the bottom of Mount Everest and move it up steps. Okay. But I'll give you an example with managers. Okay. Because I work with tons of managers over my life with our behavioral management firm. One of the scariest things that managers will say, guess what? You know what it is? I don't know, or I don't know how. Because if they say it often enough, they're afraid that people will start wondering, why did we ever hire this guy? He doesn't seem to know anything, which isn't true. If you're tackling stuff outside your comfort zone, you can't know. Okay.
Yeah.
If we're going to turn you to a $100 million business to a $1 billion company, we've got to get you doing stuff you've never done before. Because as Einstein said, if you do what you've always done, you get what you always got. You need to tackle something outside your comfort zone. And we became experts in getting people to tackle stuff outside the comfort zone. And once they started, I had a trucking company, okay? They had, I don't know, 50 trucks, long-term tractor trailers and all this stuff. And so we came in, I was working with them to try to improve productivity. But once he realized how powerful our program was, the owner and the two brothers came to me and said, I want to change our goal, which we would always say you can only change it once in every 3 months, because otherwise they change it and they change it and they change it and you never accomplish anything. But they said, now that we realize you're pushing us to tackle stuff a little out of our comfort zone, we want to start buying competitors. We have a friend who's got a company. He's got 30 trucks. He's an old guy. His kids don't want the business. And we could actually buy his company and suddenly get all his clients and his trucks, and he'd love to sell it. He'll probably work for us because he doesn't want to die. He doesn't want to, retire totally, but he's an old guy and he'd love to still working. And we actually taught him how to start buying companies. So here's the thing. So they had an accountant in-house, okay? And we have this thing called 7-day goals, 2 7-day goals, one business one personal one. And we'd hold them accountable that they had to go and do this at the end of the session. They had 7 days, and then they'd come back and give us feedback on those 2 goals. In the first week or so, people wouldn't do it, and then they'd realize they're going to be on the spot to have to do it, so they would do it. The first thing we would do is get people to do what they said they're going to do, even if it's out of their comfort zone. Okay, that's the most powerful tool we have, because if you do that, then you can get them tackling things. Okay, so the accountant, since they said we want to start buying that Joe over there, his competitor, his company, and he's a good friend and all that. So you're the accountant. You need to go over there and analyze the company. So he comes back the next week and he says, well, I wasn't able to go because it was just a crazy week we had. Okay, that's fine. By the way, we did business and personal goal. So they can't hide too long because, okay, the business goal makes sense. How about the personal one? You said you were going to do that. Oh, well, and they weren't able to do it. Anyway, so we gave him one more week. He would go out to try to do it. And he came back and he was terrified. He said, I have to tell you guys something. This is after 2 weeks. So he's embarrassed in front of his coworkers, his boss and everything. I'm afraid to do it. And that's why I haven't done it, because I've never done an analysis for a company to be acquired before. I work with the company, so I know internally, but I've never actually done an analysis of the company. He was terrified to explain that to us, and yet we needed to find that out. So I said, we have attorneys, so let's talk to attorneys and see if we can find one that knows an accountant that actually does acquisitions. And then we found that, and that person became the mentor for this person. But this guy was terrified to admit to everybody that he didn't know what to do. And our process of behavioral management is we identify a goal. Often it's bigger than what they have, including personal goals, a bigger goal than they have. And then we'll actually take them step by step so they start achieving it. And suddenly we have people that, achieve, hundreds of millions of dollars of sales where they started with a $2 million company or even they started from scratch out of their basement or out of their kitchen.
Well, it's amazing you bring up that point, because that fear is something that keeps lots of businesses and individuals back. That fear that you're going to be found out, fear that people are going to think you're stupid, fear that they think, you're going to lose your job. But I think that could be the case in some businesses, but the majority of people actually want to help you to be better, or they've got expectations that you could reach that level. And I think if you don't open yourself up to being honest, and be a little bit humble, and and say that, yes, I don't know, you can't be helped. And I've seen that in a lot of training that I've done, and some of the work I'm doing with my students right now, the fearfulness of looking foolish, or the fearfulness of going into something new. And what I do is I basically, like I used to throw my kids into the water just to get them to swim. It was perhaps a little bit mean, but generally you don't sink to the bottom, or there's somebody there to fish you out if you are in trouble.
I hope
and
so.
that Yeah, and I've had some phenomenal successes of folks who are, turning green before presenting, and now they're presenting in front of lots of people. They are doing things they've never done before. So it's such a powerful process, and it's sometimes, a prophet is never accepted in his hometown. And I think that's why bringing in consultants is so important, because people will listen to somebody else telling them what to do versus their dad or somebody in the business, because of fear or that knowledge.
Well, we're lucky because Tony Robbins has created so many billionaires who actually said that there's no way they could have become a billionaire without him pushing them, that he's actually helped sell us, sell coaches and consultants. So people recognize that, if you have somebody pushing you. I always said this, okay? This is a BrainGlue tool, by the way, is that we would describe how our process worked, and you could see their eyes glassing over, They would just go, okay, because we're talking about technical this, we use psychology this, and we use, and all these things, and we talk about these tools. And then I said, well, I came up with an analogy or metaphor, and I said, we're like a personal coach that shows up at your house at 6 a.m. and gets you to do push-ups. Maybe you can do 10 push-ups, maybe 20, but we'll get you to do more. Come on, Nicholas, you can do two more. Come on. Yes, okay, one more. And we do the same thing psychologically. And when we would explain that, people would go, oh, that's interesting. I said, yeah, could I get you to doing more push-ups than you could do on your own? He said, yeah, of course. I said, well, we're going to take your top people. We're going to do the same thing with the top people. We're going to get them to tackle something a little out of their comfort zone. And as a result of that, you'll be able to achieve that goal you've been wanting to achieve, but people are kind of slow to get there. And when they hear it with the analogy or metaphor, suddenly it sticks to the brain and they go like, oh, hey guys, this is like we're bringing on a personal coach, I had this one woman from British General Electric that we work with. We loved her, the division head. And she would always call us, come on guys, we're going to the psychology group, therapy group. That's third therapy session, everybody, let's go. And I would say, it's not therapy session. Yeah, I know, come on, guys, therapy session, let's go. It was just, okay, she was awesome.
It's the framing of it. So she framed it in a different way there.
Right.
We could, I think, gab on for hours and hours. There's so many exciting things, but I do want to touch on one other element, which is how you feel marketing has changed over the last 30 years, or how it hasn't changed, because lots of people are throwing the baby out with the bathwater in terms of marketing. Let's just put all our money onto digital and forget about this old traditional stuff. But there are still traditional tools, techniques, etc., that can be pulled through into digital marketing. How have you seen this change from sort of perhaps pre-internet to the stage now where we've got TikTok, Instagram, just masses
AI,
of
ChatGPT,
content?
and all that. Yeah. So first, I love AI. Okay, so let me say that. Okay, but I don't love AI to replace me. There's no way it can ever replace me. Okay, that's why I'll say, give me ad. So I said for BrainGlue. Okay. I came up with a phrase, switch your pitch if you want to be rich. Okay. I got another one. BrainGlue teaches you how to light the fire of desire in your buyer. Okay. So these are BrainGlue tools. Okay. So these are powerful. So I went to ChatGPT and I said, so give me some tools. And I put a lot of description of how to BrainGlue works. I don't want to do too much because it's going to steal BrainGlue and, it'll be a part of it. But anyway, and it says, so they came up with like 30 of them and 50 of them, and they were like stupid. But then finally had one, which I liked, which was, why brain glue? Because plain glue doesn't stick to the brain. I thought, oh, that's a cool one. I can use that. Okay. But it just, so people are using it. It's really brain glue. AI is very good for brainstorming. A lot of people in business, a lot of coaches and consultants, you're on your own. I have partners. I had two partners, and it was fun because you bounce ideas off them. And you're in school, so you get to bounce ideas off, and your students get to bounce ideas off you, et cetera. And that's really powerful. And so if you're all by yourself or having to come up with something, you can actually run through stuff on AI, and it'll actually give you some ideas. Like I was in this guy's program, and he was talking about what are the biggest fears that coaches have. Come up with a list, and before I'm like, oh, okay, let me think of it. How to make money? You're all by yourself. Okay. Oh, let me try AI. And I went to that. It gave me a whole long list. I don't agree with most of them, but half of them were actually pretty good ideas. So it works that way. However,
Yeah.
and it doesn't understand BrainGlue. It doesn't. It can't tell jokes. I try to keep asking it, tell me jokes, and it doesn't tell me jokes. I have a great joke. This is for us old people. Okay, you're still young, so Nicholas. So I'd rather wake up and pee than pee and wake up. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy. It just, there's some jokes you can use. Okay. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, but the point is, it doesn't understand emotion, and it's going to be a long time, if ever, that computers can understand emotion. Brain glue is about persuasion, and persuasion is the backbone of human interaction. If you're talking and somebody is, if you're talking, if I'm talking like this, and then you stop buying from me or you stop listening, it's because it's like a pain to have to listen to you. I mean, what's her name? Who is the female head of England? Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher. They want to talk about her in my book, but they thought she was intellectually really great, but they didn't want her because they didn't like her voice. So she actually went to a voice coach, and the voice coach taught her to slow it down, how she talks, and suddenly they made her the top of the party, and she became the Prime Minister of England. She was smart enough to do it, but she didn't sound right.
Yeah.
Barack Obama in America had the same issue because he recognized that you can't be angry because people are afraid of black people who are angry. And so he actually had a voice coach and a coach that worked with him. So did Oprah Winfrey had a voice coach. And so we don't think of this, but we want to understand like how you interact with people is persuasion gets you to sell your ideas and sell your products in a way that resonates with another person's brain. Okay. And it's a backbone. I hated selling in the beginning of my advertising agency. Because I hated selling, I could never do a really good job of running great ads. I had to learn the process of selling in a way that I actually liked it. Now, and I'm not a fan if they say you have to go in and sell to this person. Okay, I go like, oh, I have to. Okay, fine. But once I go in and I'm face to face with them, it's fun because I know the tools. I share examples and we talk about stuff and BrainGlue or whatever else, and it's fun. Okay, so I still have it in my mind. That's programmed in my mind, probably from childhood, because my parents would, my older brother would say, my younger brother, I'm the oldest of four, would always say, "You're stupid. You don't even know what you're talking about." And he's actually brilliant. So living with a brilliant person who's a terrorist is not fun. But persuasion is everything. Okay, persuasion is how you find your mate. The person you love. This guy said, "Oh, I have this girl and I'm trying to win her over. How do I win her over?" I said, "You got to tell her jokes." So I'm not good at jokes. It doesn't matter. They'll love you because you tell them jokes. So we came up with a bunch of jokes. And he came back and said, "Man, does this stuff work?" I have a friend who's I have two friends who are top attorneys in America. Both in the top 100. One in the top 10 attorneys in America. I don't say their names because I don't want to hurt them too much with this. But I was telling him this, and he was telling me. He was telling me that humor helps him win cases. If I can make the judge and the jury laugh, they suddenly want me to win and they kind of lean towards me. And I don't win every case, he said, but a lot of people who can't win cases, they give their case to me and I win a lot of those cases that seem otherwise unwinnable. And a large part of it is because I make people laugh. So this guy, his friend I was telling you about, he's picked up this girl. They just got married, by the way. But
Oh,
he picked up
great.
this girl, and it's like, she loves jokes. I said, you better be learning jokes every day. He's actually got into, once you get into it a lot, BrainGlue shows you how to make jokes, by the way. But
Yeah.
once he got into it, he started having fun doing it. He's still not, he's a better joke teller than I am. But anyway, still. But it makes a difference.
Well, James, in terms of selling, obviously, coming from a mechanical engineering or engineering background, you've obviously had some change in your personality or over the years, because you sound like an evangelist, a salesman to me. So obviously, you're taking your own medicine in terms of, because I'm excited. I'm going to promote the book and put a link in this podcast as well. And just before we go, let's just chat about the
just
book.
before you say this,
Yeah.
before you ask this, I saw somebody that had a T-shirt that says "Life sucks and then you die," and I thought that's horrible. We're in life right now. We have to have fun, And it's like, what do you mean? I mean, although I do know two people that can really use that T-shirt. By the way, "Life sucks and then you die." They're negative people, but we have to be positive. We have to be inspired. We have to have fun. This is life right now. This is not a practice. This is life. And so for us, even as marketers, I'll give you a quick example of a guy who came up with create metaphor. Okay. One of the tools, Paul Tran came up with an electric razor that shaves man's private areas. I don't want to get into that too much. And so he's thinking, what would be a fun way to describe this? He actually came up with the name, the lawnmower. He calls it the lawnmower, okay? And then he decided to call his company Manscaped. We're landscaping a man with the lawnmower.
Yeah.
And he sold over $100 million. He had a huge company wanted to buy him out. And he said, no, that's not enough. I'm having fun. And it's because he recognized I can have fun. You don't always have to make people laugh, but laughers are buyers. And what happened was, the lawnmower, when you buy the lawnmower, I didn't buy it, but if I bought it, I wouldn't share it. Let's start there, okay?
Yeah.
But I'd share it with the story. Hey, guess what I just got? The lawnmower. What's the lawnmower?
Exactly.
You're mowing your lawn? No, it's a shaver for men's private areas. What? It's called the lawnmower, and you start laughing, and now you get face-to-face, person-to-person selling. And what's one of the things we want is like, and I'll go back to the woman who did Mommy Needs Vodka. I'm sharing it with you because it's fun enough that I'm sharing it with you. There's a massive company called Big Ass Fans. And he sold his company for $500 million. He started from virtually scratch. He bought it from a friend. And but he figured out this, it wasn't called that originally, but he ran an ad saying, these are big ass fans. They're not, and sales exploded. And suddenly he realized, I should change the name of my company and my fans. He has a fan of a donkey, the behind of a donkey looking at you, and then the head is turned towards you. Look, he calls it Big Ass Fans. It's their logo. But he's having fun. And that's what we're doing is, as much as we can. Just Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. He sold 50 million books. I mean, go ahead, do that. Or I've Jack Canfield, anyway. But the point is, as much as we can trigger parts of the brain, and not parts of the brain that make people feel bad, but parts of their brain that, encourage a person, and give them, inspiration, the easier it is to make a great living. And then we can laugh all the way to the bank, as they say. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off on that, but I just...
No, that's, that spirit of joyfulness that you're talking about, I think is super important. And it comes across in how you sell, the work that you do, etc. If people can spot if there's a spark in you where, like, I love my work, I love teaching, I love my branding work, and people can see it, it is honestly contagious. And if you're not into something that is making you joyful, or not putting your whole effort into it, people can spot that as well. Right. And I'm sure by reading your book, folks are going to get some excellent real life tips. And I've read some of the recommendations on the book as well, and there's some exciting ones. So I'm definitely I'll share the link with our class, and I've already started reading it, but I'll buy a copy for the class as well and get them to get their own ones as well. So hopefully you can get that. Let's try and sell 50 million copies for you as well, James.
Yeah.
And you might have to translate it into Norwegian, because we're very proud of our Norwegian here.
How do you say hello in Norwegian?
Hi.
Hi.
Or hvordan går det? So it means how are you doing? So it's very there are quite a lot of similarities to English. So you do fine.
That's fun.
Good. Well, James, thank you so much. This has gone by like a whirlwind. We really could do a Joe Rogan here and talk for 4 hours, but that's not for a Friday night. But I'd definitely love to chat to you a little bit more about Persuasion and some more stories, because you seem to have a cornucopia of stories, and I'm sure we could go through some interesting case studies as well. But thank you so much again, and I look forward to going through your book in more detail.
Oh, good. And I think it's made to be fun, but it's also profound. And that's why this isn't just a book that you read, although people are reading it and laughing as they go through it, but they're reading it because they're going, I have to apply this. And it actually gets you applying stuff. And to me, that's the most important thing is if you love it, it's fun and share it, that's fun. But also if you apply it, that's the secret.
Come chat with Nicholas. He'll listen to you. Then he'll laugh, and then he'll cry with you. It's all in a safe space for you to speak your truth.